The acrid sting of ozone and pulverized rock filled Eli Mason's lungs, a brutal perfume of annihilation. Dust, thick as velvet curtains, choked the light, reducing the blasted landscape of Echelon Prime's contested border zone to shades of gray and sputtering orange, where fires still gnawed at shattered ferrocrete. His ears rang, a high, persistent whine that drowned the screams he knew must be echoing across the ruin, his own unit's cries lost in the symphony of destruction. The orbital strike hadn't discriminated. A swift, impartial fist from the heavens meant to scour this disputed patch of dirt clean of both human and arachnid alike. He pushed himself up, limbs heavy, protesting. His standard-issue combat armor scraped and dented, but miraculously intact. Around him lay a graveyard of twisted metal, remnants of fortifications, and the still forms of soldiers from both sides. United only in death, he was alone, utterly, terrifyingly alone. His training kicked in, a cold subroutine beneath the shock. Assess, survive, evade, contact. He checked his rifle, the charge low but functional. His scanner flickered weakly, useless amidst the intense electromagnetic interference left by the orbital blast. Navigation would be by instinct and the distant, jagged peaks that marked the nominal boundary of human-controlled space. A treacherous journey even on a good day. He started moving, a ghost navigating a fresh hell, stepping carefully over debris and the fallen. Then he heard it. A sound beneath the crackle of flames and the settling dust. A faint guttural chittering. A sound of pain. It wasn't human. Curiosity warred with ingrained hostility. Arachnids. The chitinous, multi-limbed sentient species humanity had been locked in a bloody interstellar war with for decades were the enemy. Orders were clear. Exterminate on sight. Yet, the sound was one of pure suffering, a universal language that transcended species. He moved towards it, rifle ready, pushing aside a slab of buckled plasteel. There, half buried, pinned beneath a collapsed support beam, lay an arachnid. But not just any arachnid, even wounded, coated in dust and leaking bluish hemolymph. The creature possessed an undeniable aura of command. Its carapace, though damaged, bore intricate markings of iridescent gold and deep crimson, patterns Eli recognized from intel briefings. Its size was formidable, larger than the warrior drones he'd fought, and its multifaceted eyes, though dimmed with pain, held a spark of fierce intelligence. This was royalty. Queen Xirella, the monarch of the local brood, the very leader whose capture or elimination was a primary strategic objective. She was grievously injured. One of her primary walking limbs was crushed beneath the beam, another bent at an unnatural angle. Smaller manipulator appendages twitched weakly. Her breathing was shallow, ragged clicks that spoke of internal damage. Her eyes fixed on him, not with the mindless aggression of her soldiers, but with a wary, calculating intensity. He could end it now. A single shot, fulfill his duty. A hero's welcome might even await him if he somehow made it back with proof. He raised his rifle, the targeting reticle hovering over her central nerve cluster. Her eyes didn't flinch, didn't plead. They simply watched him, waiting. He hesitated. The orbital strike. It hadn't been aimed solely at his unit. It had been too precise, too central to the recent skirmishes, almost as if designed to catch both sides in the open. Had she been caught in it just as he had, a pawn in a larger game, just like him? The suffering in her gaze mirrored the desolation around them, the futility of this endless conflict. He lowered his rifle. Duty felt hollow in the face of such utter destruction. Survival was paramount, but perhaps survival didn't have to mean solitary ruthlessness. Hold still, he said, the word feeling rough, alien in his own throat. He doubted she understood the language, but the tone, the lowered weapon, might convey intent. He braced himself against the shifting rubble and shoved at the heavy support beam. Metal groaned against fractured stone. It didn't budge. He needed leverage. He scanned the debris field, spotting a thick durasteel pipe, bent but solid. Jamming one end beneath the beam and using a chunk of concrete as a fulcrum, he threw his entire weight against it. Muscles screamed, protesting the strain. The beam lifted, just an inch, then two. With a final, desperate heave, it shifted enough. Xirella dragged herself free, collapsing onto the dust, her chittering breaths coming faster. He backed away slowly, giving her space, rifle held loosely at his side. She tested her undamaged limbs, attempting to rise, but faltered. One side clearly unable to bear weight, trapped, vulnerable, alone, just like him. The journey ahead was perilous. Over 30 miles of hostile territory, ravaged by war, likely patrolled by arachnid kill squads searching for survivors, or perhaps even human forces, who wouldn't ask questions before shooting an apparent deserter consorting with the enemy. Leaving her here was a death sentence. Taking her with him was madness, a betrayal of everything he'd been taught, everything he'd fought for. Yet, looking at the downed queen, a victim of the same indiscriminate violence that had claimed his comrades, he couldn't do it. Some spark of shared mortality, of common victimhood in the face of cosmic indifference, stayed his hand. He made a decision, one that defied logic, orders, and ingrained hatred. He approached her cautiously. "I can't carry you easily," he stated, more to himself than to her, "but leaving you here, that's not right either." He gestured towards the distant mountains, then to himself, then to her, a crude pantomime of shared travel, together, safety. Her multifaceted eyes narrowed, tracking his movements. Distrust radiated from her, a palpable energy. She was a queen, accustomed to command, not reliance, especially not reliance on a creature her kind considered vermin. Yet, she was also intelligent, pragmatic. She assessed her injuries, the desolate surroundings, the lone human offering this insane proposition. Slowly, deliberately, she gave a series of soft clicks, a sound subtly different from her pained gasps. It felt like acquiescence, a weary, conditional acceptance of the unacceptable. Fashioning a crude sling from salvaged belts and durable fabric torn from a destroyed transport tarp, Eli managed to hoist Xirella onto his back. Her weight was substantial, her chitinous body awkward against his armor, her undamaged limbs wrapped around him instinctively, claws carefully retracted, finding purchase on his pauldrons. It was a bizarre intimacy, the queen of his enemies clinging to him for survival. He could feel the warmth radiating from her body, hear the soft clicking of her mandibles near his ear. Every instinct screamed danger, yet he pushed the feeling down. He started walking, picking his way through the ruins, heading towards the jagged promise of the mountains. The alien queen, a heavy, breathing burden, their fates inexplicably intertwined in the ashes of war. The first few miles were a torment of silence and suspicion. Eli focused on navigation, conserving energy, his senses straining for any sign of patrols. Xirella remained largely immobile, her breathing evening out slightly, though occasional tremors ran through her frame, hinting at the pain she endured. He wondered what she was thinking. This monarch of a species known for its hive mind mentality, now utterly dependent on an individual enemy. Did she feel fear, humiliation, or was her mind so different from his own, processing this through a lens he couldn't comprehend? He offered her water from his canteen, holding it near her head, She hesitated, then dipped her mandibles carefully into the stream he poured into his cupped hand, drinking sparingly. A small gesture, but it felt significant, a crack in the wall of animosity. As dusk began to purple the bruised sky, Eli found shelter in the lee of a cluster of monolithic, wind-scoured rock formations. Gently, he lowered Xirella to the sandy ground. Her movements were stiff, pained. He gathered desiccated alien scrub, coaxing a small, low flame to life, more for psychological comfort than significant warmth. The firelight flickered across Xirella's intricate carapace, making the gold and crimson markings seem to shift and writhe. She watched the flames, her multiple eyes reflecting the dancing light. Then, she spoke, her voice a series of complex clicks and resonant undertones, utterly incomprehensible to Eli, yet undeniably speech. She gestured with a smaller manipulator towards her crushed limb, then made a sweeping motion towards the sky, mimicking the trajectory of the orbital strike. Eli nodded slowly. Yes, the strike. It hit us both, he pointed to himself, then to her, then made an explosion gesture with his hands. Boom! A shared experience. A common enemy in that moment. Xirella emitted a low thrumming sound, then tapped a claw against her chest plate, near her primary nerve center. She repeated the clicking phrase from before. Eli shook his head. I don't understand your language. He tapped his own chest. Eli Mason. He pointed at her. Xirella, Queen Xirella. Recognition flickered in her eyes. She knew her name, of course, but perhaps hearing it from him, spoken not as a target designation, but as a name, registered. She repeated the soft clicking sound, then cautiously extended a manipulator appendage, tapping his armored chest where he had indicated his name. A fragile moment of attempted communication across an immense gulf. Over the next few days, a strange routine developed. Eli would carry Xirella during the cooler parts of the day, navigating by the changing position of Echelon Prime's twin suns and the distant mountain range. They found scarce water sources, brackish but life-sustaining. For food, Eli relied on his dwindling ration bars, sharing small portions which Xirella consumed with quiet dignity. She, in turn, occasionally pointed out edible subterranean fungi or large, armored insects Eli would have overlooked, tapping them with a claw to indicate their safety. They learned to communicate through gesture, tone, and context. He learned that a certain trill indicated awareness of danger, a low hum signified contemplation, and sharp clicks expressed pain or frustration. She seemed to grasp the meaning of his simpler words. Wait, danger, water, rest. The constant proximity bred a peculiar familiarity. He learned the subtle shifts in her carapace color that indicated mood, the way her antennae twitched when she was analyzing something. She observed his meticulous cleaning of his rifle, his quiet cursing when he stumbled, his unwavering focus on their goal. One evening, as they shared the meager warmth of their fire, a patrol passed nearby. Human voices, rough and careless. Eli froze, pressing them both flat against the rock face, shielding Xirella with his own body. He held his breath, rifle clutched tight, praying they wouldn't be seen. Xirella remained utterly still, her presence surprisingly calming, her sharp senses likely detecting the patrol long before he did. The voices faded into the distance. Eli let out a slow breath, the adrenaline leaving him shaky. Xirella made a soft clicking sound, then gently touched his shoulder with a manipulator claw, a gesture that felt remarkably like reassurance. It was during one of their rests, huddled beneath an overhang, as a corrosive acid rain swept the landscape, that Xirella conveyed something truly startling. She drew patterns in the damp sand with a sharp claw. First, She depicted an arachnid symbol Eli recognized as representing her own authority, the Queen. Then, she drew another, similar but harsher symbol, adding aggressive slashes to it. She tapped this second symbol repeatedly, her clicks sharp, agitated. Then she pointed towards the direction they had come from, back towards the heart of arachnid territory, and made the explosion gesture again, but smaller, more targeted. She tapped the aggressive symbol, then herself, then simulated the orbital strike hitting her position. Eli stared at the drawings, the pieces clicking into place. "Your own people," he breathed, understanding dawning. The strike. It wasn't just random. Someone in your command. They targeted you. Xirella looked at him intently, nodding slowly, a low, mournful thrum accompanying the gesture. She added another symbol to the sand, one Eli recognized from battlefield insignias, Warlord Caress, a notoriously aggressive arachnid general known for his ruthless tactics and opposition to any form of negotiation. She tapped Caress's symbol. Then the aggressive Queen symbol, indicating an alliance or perhaps Caress's usurpation of power. Then she drew the peace symbol used in the failed diplomatic talks years ago, a stylized image of interlocking human and arachnid hands, and slashed a violent line through it. Caress. He had targeted his own queen because she sought peace. The orbital strike wasn't just an attack on humans. It was the opening move of a coup. This revelation shifted everything. They weren't just two survivors clinging to life. They were fugitives from a common enemy, a treacherous warlord who threatened not only Xirella's rule, but any chance of ending the generation's long war. Their journey took on a new urgency, a shared purpose beyond mere survival. Xirella seemed to draw strength from this shared understanding, her movements becoming slightly more fluid, her focus sharper. She began to actively participate in navigation, pointing out hidden paths, indicating areas likely to be heavily patrolled by Caress's loyalists. Her knowledge of the terrain, her home territory, was invaluable. One evening, while Eli was scavenging for supplies near a derelict communication outpost, his scanner, miraculously regaining partial function, picked up a fragmented, encrypted arachnid transmission. It was heavily damaged, looping and filled with static, but he caught key phrases: Caress consolidation, human prisoner, Dots Commander Rourke, public execution, dissuade dissent. Colonel Rourke. Eli knew the name. A respected human commander, captured during a disastrous offensive months ago. Caress planned to execute him publicly, a brutal display of power meant to solidify his coup and extinguish any remaining hope for peace among his own kind. Eli hurried back to their temporary shelter, his heart pounding. He relayed the fragmented information to Xirella using their established system of gestures, names, and the sandy sketches that had become their primary mode of communication. He drew Rourke's rank insignia, the symbol for capture, then Caress's symbol, followed by a crude depiction of an execution. Xirella reacted with a sharp series of clicks, her antennae vibrating with agitation. Rourke's execution would be a catastrophe, inflaming human hatred and playing directly into Caress's warmongering agenda. It would destroy any possibility of the peace she had risked her life for. Their objective changed instantly. Reaching human lines was no longer the priority. They needed to stop the execution, expose Caress. But how? Two fugitives, one badly injured, against a warlord consolidating power. Xirella tapped the sand decisively. She drew a symbol Eli didn't recognize, a triangular structure with radiating lines. She pointed northwest, away from the human border, deeper into a contested buffer zone. Then she drew symbols for talk and help, a neutral zone, an outpost, perhaps. Somewhere they could seek assistance, leverage Xirella's true authority against the usurper. It was a long shot, fraught with danger, taking them further from perceived safety, but it was the only chance they had. "All right," Eli said, meeting her gaze. "We go northwest. We try to find help. We have to save Rourke." Xirella dipped her head in agreement, a silent pact forged between human soldier and alien queen against the backdrop of impending war and betrayal. Their strange alliance, born of desperation, was about to step onto a much larger stage. The journey northwest took them through terrain even more desolate and treacherous, twisted forests of crystalline flora that shattered at a touch, emitting psychoactive spores, canyons carved by ancient rivers of lava, now home to territorial, silicon-based predators. They navigated by the faint constellations visible through Echelon Prime's thin atmosphere. Xirella's astronomical knowledge proving surprisingly precise. Their bond deepened with every shared hardship, every narrow escape. Eli learned to anticipate Xirella's needs, adjusting the sling for her comfort, finding sheltered spots for rest. She, in turn, seemed to develop a protective instinct towards him, often alerting him to dangers his human senses missed: unstable ground, hidden sinkholes, airborne toxins. They fought side by side against monstrous native fauna, Eli's rifle spitting plasma bolts while Xirella used her undamaged limbs and sharp mandibles with surprising ferocity, defending her unlikely protector. One night, huddled close for warmth against a biting wind that carried shards of ice, Eli found himself speaking, not in gestures, but in quiet words, recounting memories of his home, his family, the life he'd left behind for this brutal war. He didn't know if she understood the specifics, but she listened, her low hum a soothing counterpoint to the wind's howl. It felt strangely cathartic, sharing his past with this alien being who had become his most trusted companion. She responded with complex patterns of clicks and trills, conveying, he sensed, her own history, the weight of her lineage, the burden of leadership, the isolation of her position even before the coup. Understanding transcended language, flowing between them in the shared silence and the flickering firelight. They finally reached the coordinates Xirella had indicated, a cluster of weathered, modular domes nestled in a wide, barren valley, shielded by low energy barriers that shimmered faintly in the twin sunlight. This was Oasis Station, a semi-autonomous trading post and diplomatic neutral ground, tolerated by both sides for its usefulness in facilitating back-channel communications and illicit trade. Getting inside wouldn't be easy. Eli was a soldier from a warring faction, and Xirella, while potentially recognizable as the Queen, was also deep in enemy territory according to official reports, presumed dead or captured. Her presence here, with a human, would raise immediate alarms. Xirella formulated a plan. Using salvaged components Eli had scavenged, she modified his personal comm unit, boosting its signal and altering its frequency to broadcast on a specific, archaic arachnid diplomatic channel. She transmitted a coded message, identifying herself and requesting sanctuary, embedding her unique biosignature as authentication. It was a gamble. Caress might be monitoring these channels, or the station authorities might simply refuse. They waited, hidden amongst the rocks overlooking the station, tension thick between them. Hours passed. Then, a flicker of light from the station's main airlock. A transport skiff detached and floated smoothly towards their position, landing softly a short distance away. The ramp lowered, revealing two figures, a lanky, reptilian Xantusi trader known for dealing with all sides, and a heavily modified security drone. The Xantusi spoke into a translator, its voice metallic, synthesized. Queen Xirella, your signal was received. Oasis Station acknowledges your claim, but requires verification. Approach slowly. The human must remain behind for now. Xirella looked at Eli, a complex mix of regal authority and, surprisingly, reluctance in her eyes. Eli nodded. Go. This is your play. I'll be ready. He trusted her. It was a trust forged in fire, dust, and shared desperation. Xirella moved forward with pained dignity, her injuries still apparent. The Zantusi studied her closely, its drone scanning her biosignature. After a tense moment, the traitor bowed low, a gesture of respect. Verification confirmed. Your Majesty. Warlord Caress has declared you deceased. Your arrival presents complications and opportunities. Please come aboard. We offer sanctuary for a price. Xirella paused at the ramp, looking back at Eli one last time before disappearing inside the skiff. Eli waited, concealed, every nerve on edge. What deals were being struck inside those domes? Would they honor sanctuary, or sell her out to Caress, or perhaps detain him as soon as she was secure? Time stretched thin. Then, the skiff returned, the ramp lowered, and the Zantusi emerged again. Human soldier, Eli Mason. Queen Xirella requests your presence. She has vouched for you in a most unprecedented manner. You are granted passage under her protection. Relief washed over Eli, so potent it almost buckled his knees. He holstered his rifle and walked towards the skiff, stepping into the unknown territory of diplomacy and intrigue. Inside Oasis Station, the atmosphere was a bewildering mix of species, languages, and agendas. Beings from a dozen different worlds mingled in the central concourse, haggling over cargo, exchanging information, cutting deals in shadowed alcoves. The air hummed with translation devices and the low thrum of the station's life support. Eli, escorted by the Zantusi and station security drones, felt utterly conspicuous. The only human in sight, drawing curious and often hostile stares. He was led to a private chamber, comfortably appointed but secure. Xirella was already there, reclining on cushions adapted for her physiology. Medical drones attended to her injuries, applying regenerative salves and bracing her damaged limbs. She looked weary but resolute. Eli, she began, her voice transmitted through a translation device provided by the station, a sophisticated system that converted her clicks and resonance into slightly formal, synthesized English. It was startling to hear her thoughts articulated so clearly after weeks of rudimentary communication. The station master, a pragmatist named Kale, has granted us temporary asylum. He sees profit in chaos, and Caress's instability is bad for business, but our safety is conditional. News of my survival and my association with you will spread. Caress will learn of it soon. What did you tell them? About me, Eli asked, needing to understand his standing. I told them the truth, Xirella replied, her multifaceted eyes meeting his. That you saved my life, that you acted with honor against your own protocols, that you are essential to my continued survival and purpose. She paused, the translator catching the subtle hesitation. To secure our position here, to grant you immunity from detention as an enemy combatant, I have invoked a right reserved for arachnid monarchs facing existential threat. I have declared my intent to name a consort, and I have named you, Eli Mason. Eli stared at her, stunned into silence. Consort, her chosen mate, a human. The political and biological implications were staggering, unthinkable. Xirella, you can't be serious. That's impossible. Our species, it is unprecedented. She acknowledged calmly. but not impossible. It is a political designation. Primarily, it grants you royal protection under arachnid law, recognized even by my enemies. Though they will dispute its validity, it binds your fate to mine. Here, in this neutral territory, it sends a message to Caress and to any potential allies that my authority endures and that unexpected alliances are forming. Her gaze was steady, analytical. Yet beneath the political pragmatism, Eli sensed something else, something deeper that the translator couldn't capture. It was the necessary move to protect you and to give us leverage. Do you accept this designation, Eli Mason? It carries risks, but it offers our best chance. He thought of the journey, the shared firelight, the trust built in the face of death. He thought of Colonel Rourke, facing execution. He thought of the fragile hope for peace Caress sought to extinguish. This was madness, but it was their madness, forged together. Yes, he said, his voice firm. I accept. Xirella inclined her head. Then it is done. We are bound. Soldier Mason. Now, we must use this bond to expose Caress and save your Colonel Rourke. Kale has granted us access to the station's communication arrays. It is time to send shockwaves through both our empires. The Queen and her human consort, an alliance that defied history, prepared to fight their war not with weapons, but with truth and political maneuvering. From the fragile sanctuary of Oasis Station, the declaration sent tremors through the intricate political web connecting Oasis Station to the wider galaxy. Encrypted messages flashed back and forth. Arachnid frequencies buzzed with disbelief and outrage from Caress's faction, while whispers of curiosity and cautious optimism emerged from neutral territories and those arachnid broods wary of Caress's naked ambition. Human command structures, intercepting the bizarre announcement, were thrown into confusion. A human soldier, consort to the arachnid queen they thought dead. Was it a trick, a defection, propaganda, or something far stranger? Eli found himself the subject of intense scrutiny within the station. Aliens he passed averted their gaze or stared with open fascination. He was given access to Xirella's secure quarters, a suite adapted to her needs, but equipped with human-compatible interfaces at her insistence. They spent hours strategizing, using the station's comms to leak carefully selected information, evidence of the orbital strike being deliberately targeted. Testimonials from arachnid loyalists, appalled by Caress's actions, gathered via Xirella's covert channels, highlighting his disregard for established arachnid codes of honor. Xirella, despite her injuries, commanded the situation with regal authority, dictating messages, analyzing intelligence reports provided by Kale for a hefty price, and directing Eli on how best to frame their narrative for human consumption. Caress derives his power from fear and the perpetuation of conflict, Xirella explained via the translator, gesturing towards a holographic display showing Caress's troop movements. He paints humanity as an existential threat, incapable of reason or peace. Our alliance, your presence at my side, directly contradicts his narrative. We must amplify this contradiction. She accessed historical archives, showing Eli records of past arachnid leaders who had sought diplomatic solutions. Leaders Caress had systematically undermined or eliminated. My pursuit of peace talks was the final catalyst for his treason. He fears reconciliation more than he fears defeat. Eli worked tirelessly, drafting messages intended for human command. Using his knowledge of military protocols and psychological operations, he authenticated his identity, described the ambush, his rescue of Xirella, and the evidence of Caress's coup. He emphasized that Xirella represented a legitimate faction seeking peace, betrayed by a warlord. He pleaded for them to delay any retaliatory strikes, to recognize the opportunity this crisis presented. And he stressed the imminent danger to Colonel Rourke, whose execution was clearly intended to sabotage any chance of de-escalation. He sent the messages through secure channels provided by Kale, knowing they might be intercepted or dismissed. But it was a chance he had to take. Meanwhile, Xirella focused on rallying support within the arachnid hierarchy. She contacted brood mothers on distant worlds, influential matriarchs who commanded vast resources and loyalty. She presented her case, leveraging ancient protocols and kinship ties, painting Caress as a dangerous aberration who threatened the stability of their entire species. The response was initially cautious, fragmented, but her survival and her audacious alliance with Eli sparked debate, dividing loyalties. Some saw Caress's ruthlessness as necessary, others saw his actions as dishonorable and reckless. Seeds of dissent were sown. Their time was running out. Intelligence suggested Caress was moving up the timetable for Rourke's execution, planning to stage it near the former diplomatic zone, a place resonant with the memory of failed peace attempts, twisting its symbolism into one of human treachery and arachnid resolve. It was a calculated move to cement his power and provoke a massive human military response. "We cannot let him control the narrative," Xirella stated, her voice tight with urgency. "Rourke's death would validate Caress in the eyes of many. We must intervene directly. But how? Oasis Station was neutral ground. Kale would not permit them to launch an attack from his territory. They had no army, only a handful of station guards whose loyalty was questionable and prohibitively expensive. Eli paced the chamber. "We need allies." On the ground, near the diplomatic zone, he thought of the soldiers, human and arachnid, disillusioned by the endless war, caught in the crossfire of ambitious leaders. What if? What if we appeal directly to them? To the soldiers' Caress commands, to the human forces nearby. Xirella considered this. A direct broadcast. Risky. Caress controls most communication relays. But perhaps. She conferred with Kale's technicians. There was a possibility. Using the station's powerful transmitters to override local military channels for a brief window, targeting the specific region around the diplomatic zone. It would require immense power, tipping their hand completely, and Kale demanded an exorbitant fee and plausible deniability. They agreed. The fate of Rourke, and potentially the war itself, hinged on this broadcast. They prepared their message. Xirella would speak first, addressing the arachnid forces, revealing Caress's treason, showing proof of his targeting of her, the rightful queen, appealing to their honor and questioning the purpose of executing a prisoner against established codes. Then Eli would speak, addressing both human and arachnid soldiers, speaking not as enemies, but as fellow warriors trapped in a conflict manipulated by leaders like Caress. He would speak of his rescue by Xirella, of their shared ordeal, of the possibility of a different future, urging them to lay down arms, to refuse the illegal order, to recognize their common enemy in the warlord who profited from their bloodshed. As the technicians prepared the broadcast array, Eli felt a profound sense of unreality. A few weeks ago, he was fighting arachnids in brutal trench warfare. Now, he stood beside their queen, preparing to address both armies, advocating for peace. His fate inextricably linked with hers. He looked at Xirella. Her injuries were healing, her strength returning. The translator conveyed her words, but he was learning to read the subtle cues in her posture, the intensity in her eyes. "Are you ready?" "Eli Mason," she asked, ready to gamble everything on words. He nodded. "We have to try." "Your Majesty." A flicker of something warm crossed her features. Xirella, she corrected gently. In this, we are partners. The broadcast went live. Xirella's voice, resonant and commanding even through the translators, echoed across arachnid channels, laying bare Caress's betrayal. She spoke of honor, duty, and the path to peace he had sabotaged. Then Eli's voice followed, earnest, impassioned, speaking of shared suffering and the potential for reconciliation. He spoke of Xirella's courage, her commitment to ending the war, contrasting it with Caress's bloodlust. He ended with a simple plea. Don't follow his orders. Don't execute Colonel Rourke. Stand down. Listen to your queen. Listen to reason. Give peace a chance. Silence followed the broadcast. Had anyone listened? Had it gotten through? Then, fragmented reports started trickling back to Oasis Station. Confusion reigned in the diplomatic zone. Some arachnid units hesitated, questioning orders. Human forces, monitoring the transmission, paused their own planned maneuvers, unsure how to react to this bizarre turn of events. Caress, enraged, ordered the broadcast jammed, but the message had been delivered. Doubt had been introduced. Then came the crucial news. Colonel Rourke was still alive. The execution had been delayed amidst the confusion. They had bought time, but Caress wouldn't be deterred for long. He doubled down, ordering loyalist units to secure Rourke and prepare for a forced execution, purging commanders who hesitated. He mobilized his forces, preparing to crush the nascent dissent and make an example of anyone who defied him. The diplomatic zone was becoming a powder keg. He's forcing a confrontation, Eli observed grimly. He wants blood to wash away the doubt. Xirella nodded, her mandibles clicking softly. Then, we must meet him there, not just with words, but with presence. We must rally those willing to stand against him. She turned to Kale, station master. We require transport, armed transport, to the diplomatic zone, and we will need allies. Kale stroked his scaled chin. This moves beyond sanctuary, Your Majesty. This is intervention. The price will be substantial. Xirella met his gaze unflinchingly. The price of failure is higher. Name it. The negotiation was swift, brutal. Xirella pledged future trade concessions, mineral rights, artifacts from her own vaults. Kyle, seeing the potential for immense profit and influence, should Xirella regain power, finally agreed. He would provide a heavily armed freighter, piloted by mercenary crews, and facilitate contact with independent factions operating near the zone who might be persuaded to join their cause for the right incentives. Eli checked his gear, the familiar weight of his rifle strangely comforting amidst the political maneuvering. He was a soldier again, heading back into the fire, but this time with a different mission, a different ally. As they prepared to board the freighter, Xirella paused beside him. Eli Mason, this path is dangerous, more dangerous than our journey here. Are you certain? He looked at the Queen, no longer just an alien, but a partner, a leader he respected, perhaps even cared for. We started this together. Xirella, we finish it together. She touched his arm with a claw, a gesture now familiar, conveying trust and shared resolve. Together, the human soldier and the arachnid queen, bound by an unlikely alliance and the hope for peace, departed Oasis Station, heading towards a final confrontation with the warlord who threatened to engulf both their species in perpetual war. The freighter, a repurposed bulk hauler bristling with concealed weaponry and shielded compartments, sliced through the upper atmosphere of Echelon Prime, descending towards the scarred plains surrounding the former diplomatic zone. Below, the land was a patchwork of ruined negotiation centers, abandoned fortifications, and temporary military encampments. Columns of smoke marked recent skirmishes. Caress's forces were converging. A tightening noose around the area where Colonel Rourke was reportedly held. A heavily damaged but structurally sound senatorial building from the era of failed peace talks. Through encrypted channels facilitated by Kale, Xirella and Eli established contact with disparate groups who had reason to oppose Caress. A contingent of arachnid warriors from a matriarchal brood, traditionally rivals with Caress's clan, disgusted by his dishonorable coup. A unit of human mercenaries, stranded after their contract was voided by the orbital strike, interested only in payment and safe passage. Even a small group of disillusioned human soldiers from Eli's own military division, cut off and wary after intercepting the confusing transmissions, cautiously willing to listen. Forging this motley group into a cohesive fighting force was Eli's task. Relying on his combat experience and the sheer persuasive power of their unique situation, Xirella, meanwhile, used her authority and Kale's credits to secure resources, coordinate movements, and promise rewards, appealing to honor, pragmatism, or greed as needed. They established a temporary command post in a network of deep caves several miles from the senatorial building, hidden from Caress's scanners. The air crackled with tension, a mix of species, languages, and barely suppressed mistrust. Eli moved between groups, outlining the plan, a swift, surgical strike to liberate Rourke before Caress could stage the execution, while simultaneously broadcasting undeniable proof of Caress's treason to cripple his command structure. Xirella addressed the assembled warriors, her presence commanding respect. Caress fights for power. Her translated voice echoed in the cavern. We fight for survival, for honor, for the future. We fight for peace. Stand with us, and you will be remembered not as mercenaries or rivals, but as founders of a new era. The assault began under the cover of Echelon Prime's swift twilight. Eli led the primary insertion team, a mixed group of humans and arachnids, utilizing stealth infiltration tactics to approach the senatorial building through underground service tunnels Eli had identified from old schematics. Xirella coordinated supporting actions from the command post, directing diversionary attacks by the mercenaries to draw Caress's attention and feeding real-time intelligence updates. The bond between them now extended to the battlefield, a seamless blend of human tactics and arachnid strategic oversight. Inside the tunnels, the air was thick with dust and the smell of decay. They moved silently, communicating with hand signals. They bypassed automated defenses, disabled sensor grids. Resistance was lighter than expected initially. Caress had concentrated his most loyal troops around Rourke's immediate location, underestimating the possibility of such a targeted, multi-species infiltration. They reached the sublevels of the senatorial building, the sounds of guards echoing from above. Eli signaled a halt. Phase 2, he whispered into his comm. Miles away. Xirella gave the command. The powerful transmitters aboard their hidden freighter, amplified by Kale's Oasis Station relays, hijacked the primary military frequencies across the entire zone. This time, it wasn't just voices. It was hard evidence, recordings implicating Caress in the assassination plot against Xirella, intercepted orders detailing the plan to execute Rourke specifically to incite war, financial records showing illicit arms deals Kale had conveniently uncovered. The broadcast was looped, undeniable, sowing chaos and confusion among Caress's ranks simultaneously. Eli's team breached the upper levels. They moved fast, a whirlwind of coordinated fire. Human plasma bolts and arachnid biospitters worked in tandem, covering corridors, suppressing enemy positions. The fighting was fierce, close quarters. Caress's elite guard, fanatically loyal, fought with desperation. Eli moved with practiced efficiency, his rifle spitting energy, his movements precise. Beside him, arachnid warriors scuttled along walls and ceilings, their multiple limbs providing tactical advantages in the complex architecture. It was a strange, deadly ballet. Former enemies fighting as one. They burst into the central chamber, a vast, damaged hall where Colonel Rourke was chained, flanked by heavily armed guards and Caress himself, the warlord, a hulking brute even for an arachnid, his carapace scarred and menacing, turned in surprise, his mandibles clicking in fury. Xirella's pet and her brood traitors. You dare defy me. Your reign of lies is over. Caress, Eli shouted, signaling his team to spread out, finding cover. Lies. Caress hissed, gesturing towards Rourke. Peace is the lie. Humans understand only force. I will show our kind the true path. He raised a heavy energy weapon. The firefight erupted. Plasma bolts and bio-corrosive streams crisscrossed the chamber. Eli focused on suppressing Caress while his team worked to free. Rourke, the colonel, though weakened, watched the chaotic scene with disbelief, seeing humans and arachnids fighting together against the warlord. Xirella's voice suddenly cut through the comms, broadcast openly now. Warriors of the brood, Caress has dishonored us all. He targeted your queen, betrayed our codes. Do not die for his ambition. Lay down your arms. Stand with your true queen. Her words, combined with the ongoing broadcast of evidence, had a visible effect. Some of Caress's guards hesitated, looking at each other, then at the defiant warlord. Their resolve wavered. Seeing his support crumble, Caress roared in rage, charging directly at Eli. His massive claws extended. Eli stood his ground, firing his rifle, but the shots ricocheted off Caress's thickest armor. The warlord slammed into him, sending him sprawling, his rifle skittering away. Caress raised a claw for the killing blow. Suddenly, several of Xirella's loyal arachnid warriors intercepted him, tackling him, binding his limbs with surprising strength. More guards, convinced by Xirella's appeal and Caress's desperation, lowered their weapons, refusing to engage further. Caress struggled futilely, screeching threats and curses. The battle was over. Eli retrieved his rifle, catching his breath, watching as the formidable warlord was subdued by his own kind. Rourke was freed, bewildered but safe. Soldiers from both sides slowly emerged from cover, cautiously observing each other. The shared experience of defying Caress creating a fragile, uncertain truce in the ruined hall. Xirella arrived shortly after, escorted by her guards, surveying the scene with quiet authority. She ordered Caress taken into custody, to be judged according to arachnid tradition. She approached Colonel Rourke, offering a formal nod. Colonel, you are safe. Caress's coup has failed. Rourke, still processing the impossible reality, managed a salute. Your Majesty, Soldier Mason, I don't understand all of this, but thank you. Eli stood beside Xirella, looking out at the mixed group of soldiers, the tension slowly easing, replaced by exhaustion and cautious curiosity. They had done it. They had faced the warlord and won, not just through force, but through unity. The cost had been high, but the path, however uncertain, was now open for something other than war. In the aftermath, the diplomatic zone became a hub of unprecedented activity, with Caress deposed and his treason exposed. Xirella's authority was gradually reasserted. Human command, receiving confirmation from a bewildered Colonel Rourke and Eli's own detailed reports, cautiously agreed to a ceasefire in the sector, sending envoys not for surrender, but for negotiation. Soldiers who had fought against Caress, both human and arachnid, formed a tentative joint security force, maintaining peace in the zone under Xirella's oversight and Rourke's cautious cooperation. The seeds of trust, planted in the shared danger of the caves and the final battle, began to sprout. Xirella and Eli were central to this fragile process. Their alliance, once a scandal, was now viewed with cautious fascination, a living symbol of the potential for change. They worked tirelessly, mediating disputes, coordinating relief efforts for the war-torn region, and laying the groundwork for formal peace talks. The designation of Eli as consort, initially a political maneuver, took on deeper significance. They had faced death together, trusted each other implicitly, and relied on one another's strengths. A bond forged in extremity had blossomed into mutual respect, admiration, and something akin to affection, baffling and undeniable to both. Recognizing the power of their symbolic union, Xirella proposed a formal bonding ceremony, an ancient arachnid rite adapted to their unique circumstances. It wasn't merely a political statement anymore, but a genuine desire to solidify their partnership, to bridge the chasm between their species, not just with treaties, but with a personal commitment. It will show both our peoples that this alliance is not temporary, not fragile, she explained to Eli, her voice softer now, the translator less necessary as they learn to understand each other's nuances. It will demonstrate that unity is possible, even desirable. Eli felt a complex mix of apprehension and profound emotion, a life with Xirella on her world. As her consort, it was a future he could never have imagined. Yet, the thought of leaving her, returning to a human life that now felt distant and disconnected, was equally unsettling. He had found purpose here, beside her, fighting for something larger than himself. Yes, he agreed, meeting her multifaceted gaze. Let us show them unity. The ceremony was held in the rehabilitated central plaza of the diplomatic zone, witnessed by delegations from both human command and various arachnid broods, as well as the soldiers who had fought together. It combined elements from both cultures, human vows of partnership exchanged alongside the intricate arachnid rituals of shared resonance and biosignature merging. Eli stood beside Xirella, no longer just a soldier, but a partner, a bridge between worlds. As they completed the final rites, a palpable sense of hope filled the plaza, a fragile but powerful feeling that transcended species. Their union, born from the ashes of conflict, became a beacon, illuminating the path towards a future where humans and arachnids could coexist, not as enemies, but as partners. The long war was not yet over across the galaxy, but here, in this scarred corner of Echelon Prime, under the watchful eyes of a queen and her human consort, peace had finally begun to dawn, cemented not only by treaty, but by an improbable, revolutionary love. Together, they faced the challenges ahead, ready to build the future they had fought so hard to secure. Their bond a testament to the extraordinary possibilities that arise when compassion overcomes conflict.